The boardroom smelled like ozone and old money. The kind of money that had survived planetary recessions, corporate wars, and the occasional assassination attempt. John Vexler sat at the long obsidian table, hands steepled, eyes locked on the holo display in front of him. The projection flickered, a massive star map of the Odran expanse, a region once firmly in the hands of the galactic elite, now slowly being devoured by the Terran Republic. Another piece on the board. Another acquisition. Across from him, the towering figure of Director Axlea leaned back in her chair, tentacles coiling and uncoiling in that telltale way that meant she was thinking. Her species, the Vraxis, were renowned negotiators. Ruthless, pragmatic, and impossibly difficult to read. But John? John had spent enough time around Axlea to know her rhythms, the micro-movements that meant she was considering something carefully. That was why he liked her. Unlike the rest of the bureaucratic slime that infested the galaxy's ruling councils, Axlea understood the game. More importantly, she played to win. John, she said finally, her voice a deep, resonating hum. This acquisition is ambitious. John smirked. That's one way to put it. You don't just take a sector from the Kelry Syndicate. You don't just stroll into their backyard and pluck an entire economic zone like a ripe fruit. You do if you have the right leverage. Axlea's eyes, 6 black orbs set deep in her chitinous face, narrowed slightly. You have something, don't you? John reached into his jacket, pulling out a small, sleek data chip. He slid it across the table. This is how we take another piece. She picked up the chip with 2 clawed fingers and slotted it into her wrist interface. The display above them changed. A series of financial records, backdoor deals, blackmail material. Enough to fracture the Kelry Syndicate from the inside out. Axlea let out a low, clicking sound. A laugh maybe. Or admiration. It was hard to tell. You've been busy, she murmured. John leaned forward. This isn't just about a sector. This is about the bigger picture. Every piece we take, every deal we close, every fracture we create, it all moves us closer to control. And I don't play to lose. Axlea studied him for a long moment. Then slowly she nodded. I'll make the calls. John grinned. Good. Let's grab another piece. Director Axlea's 6 black eyes flickered as she tapped her clawed fingers against the smooth surface of the table. John, if we go through with this, we aren't just making a financial acquisition. We're declaring war on the Kelry Syndicate. John Vexler leaned back, a smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. I wouldn't call it a war. More like a strategic realignment of assets. Axlea let out a low, vibrating hum. You're enjoying this. Of course I am. John reached for the decanter in front of him, pouring himself a glass of amber liquid. Every empire, every corporation, every syndicate in this galaxy has spent centuries underestimating humans. We weren't even allowed at the galactic negotiation tables 100 years ago. Now. He swirled his drink. Now we take what we want. Axlea exhaled sharply, a sound halfway between amusement and exasperation. And the Kelry? They will respond. Violently. John raised his glass. Let them. Hours later, John stood in his private suite aboard the Leviathan, a Terran Republic dreadnought disguised as a corporate vessel. The glow of the Odran Expanse's twin suns cast long shadows across his desk. The data chip Axlea had analyzed earlier now sat embedded in his console, its secrets laid bare before him. The Kelry Syndicate wasn't just running illegal operations. They were knee-deep in war crimes, black market bioweapons, and experimental AI projects that had been outlawed by every sane civilization. If this information went public, the Syndicate wouldn't just collapse, it would be obliterated. John's comms panel chimed. Go ahead, he said. Axlea's voice came through, steady and sharp. It's done. The first wave of financial disruptions has begun. Kelry assets are freezing across 5 systems. John smiled. And their response? They just put out a kill order on you. He chuckled. Took them long enough. John? Axlea's voice turned serious. They won't play fair. They never do. He downed the last of his drink and placed the glass on his desk. Which is why we move first. A second chime interrupted their conversation. This time the voice was lower, colder. Sir, came the voice of his security chief, Lieutenant Vega. We have movement. Kelry strike teams just entered the system. Looks like they're gunning for you. John grinned. Well then. He adjusted his coat and turned toward the door. Let's make sure they regret it. The lights in the Leviathan's command center dimmed as emergency protocols activated. Holographic displays shimmered to life, outlining the cavalry strike teams closing in on their position. Red dots moved like hunting beasts, methodically surrounding the station where John was housed. Lieutenant Vega's voice came through sharp and urgent. Cavalry strike squads confirmed. Stealth shuttles. Advanced infiltration tech. They're aiming for a surgical hit. John cracked his knuckles, stepping toward the central command holodeck. His reflection stared back at him, the cold intensity in his eyes matching the situation. Surgical hit? He scoffed. Bad luck for them. I prefer blunt force trauma. Axlea's voice cut in. John, if they breach your location, extraction will be impossible. The Republic won't risk open war over. He interrupted her with a grin. Who said anything about extraction? Vega snorted. I was about to say the same thing. John turned to his security chief. Deploy the decoys, make them think I'm scrambling to escape. Meanwhile, load up the sentry drones and deploy our counter squads. We don't just hold, we counter-strike. Vega saluted. On it. The room buzzed with activity as his orders were relayed. The Leviathan wasn't just a corporate flagship, it was a trap. And the cavalry were walking straight into it. Cavalry Strike Team Theta, Landing Bay Alpha. The cavalry moved like wraiths, their armor designed to absorb sound, their rifles optimized for quick, precise takedowns. Their mission was simple: breach, locate John Vexler, execute, extract. Their leader, Captain Zerlock, gave a silent hand signal, and the squad advanced through the hangar's ventilation shaft. Sensors showed a human presence in the control room ahead. Perfect. Zerlock's claw hovered over his rifle's trigger as the first operative entered. The floor exploded beneath them. Automated sentry turrets erupted from hidden compartments, spewing out rapid-fire pulse rounds. 2 cavalry went down before they could react, their adaptive shields flickering under the onslaught. Then the human security teams hit them. The first wave of Republic operators descended from above, plasma blades carving through the Syndicate's advanced armor as pulse shots found their targets. The cavalry were trained killers, but they weren't Terran Republic combat veterans. They tried to regroup. Failed. And in the chaos, John stepped onto the battlefield. John Vexler, battlefield control. John ducked behind a crate as a pulse round zipped past his head. Vega was next to him, grinning like a madman. I counted 5 down before you even joined in. John smirked. Gotta let them feel like they have a chance. A cavalry operative charged at him, blade in hand. John sidestepped, caught the alien's wrist, and broke it in a single motion. The cavalry screeched in agony before John finished him with a pulse shot to the head. More Syndicate forces poured in, desperate to overwhelm the Republic's response. John activated his wrist comm. Axlea, how's the rest of the board looking? Her reply came instantly. Cavalry forces are stretched thin. Your decoy escape attempt worked. They split their forces. You have an opening. John grinned. Perfect. He turned to Vega. Let's flip the table. Vega's grin widened as he raised his wrist module and activated the explosives planted throughout the docking bay. Fire. Chaos. Screams. And in the middle of it, John Vexler, smiling like a man who had already won. The explosion rocked the docking bay like a thunderclap from hell. Flames roared through the cavalry formation, sending Syndicate operatives sprawling in every direction. The air filled with the sharp scent of burning armor and ozone as emergency bulkheads slammed into place. John Vexler walked forward, plasma pistol raised, his expression calm amidst the carnage. A wounded cavalry operative scrambled backward, clutching at a shattered leg. John leveled his weapon at the alien's head. You had one chance to walk away. You didn't take it. The cavalry hissed through bloody teeth. The Syndicate does not fear. John pulled the trigger. The alien's head snapped back, body going limp. Yeah, I've heard it before. The Syndicate's fleet, command bridge. Captain Zerlock was dead. Half the cavalry strike teams were gone. And the rest? They were trapped. Admiral Vale of the Syndicate fleet watched in horror as the Leviathan's defensive systems came to life. What was supposed to be a simple assassination and extraction had turned into a disaster. Plasma turrets powered up along the station's outer hull. Missile bays slid open. Hundreds of Republic war drones launched all at once. A black cloud of destruction. No.